So start by finding the discriminant. As I said, discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. Now the first case I want to describe is when the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, is greater than 0. Okay? If the value inside the square root, which is the discriminant, is greater than 0, then there are two roots. Okay? If you see that the discriminant is greater than 0, you can immediately say that there are two roots. Okay? So the first one is when it's going to be the positive one, and the next one when it's going to be negative. Okay? Remember how the quadratic is negative b plus or minus? So if this value is a positive value, we're going to have a value for the square root of that value. So we're going to have one that's positive that and one that's negative that. So we're going to have two distinct roots. Okay, so that's the first case. So when discriminant is greater than 0. And the next case I want to describe is when the discriminant is equal to 0. Okay, when it's exactly equal to 0, then you can say that there is going to be only one root, or only one solution. Alright? Now, I'll show you why there's only one root if discriminant equals to 0. Because have a look here, guys, if that's the discriminant and if that's going to be equal to 0, that's what we're going to have, aren't we? Negative b plus or minus root 0, since b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing is 0 over 2a. Now, root 0 is just 0, isn't it? So negative b plus 0 is the same thing as negative b minus 0. So therefore we can simplify this to negative b over 2a, and that's the only one solution or root for that particular rule. Okay? So that's why it's only going to have one root. So you can say, as soon as you see that the discriminant is 0, you can just say that there's only going to be one root. Alright? So that's the second case. Now the final case is when we have b squared minus 4ac, the discriminant, is less than 0. Okay, if it's less than 0, that means it's a negative number. If we have that, there are going to be no roots. Okay, as soon as you see a negative discriminant, you can say that there's no roots. And the reason for that is because inside the square root, if b squared minus 4ac is a negative value, can we square root a negative value? This is something that I've been stressing to you guys a lot in our previous lessons as well. But square root of a negative value cannot happen. Okay, we cannot square root a negative value because that's going to be unreal, okay, or imaginary or undefined. So therefore, we cannot square root a negative value. So therefore, this whole quadratic formula will not have a value. Okay, so therefore it will have no roots. Okay, so those are the three conditions for discriminant. One that's greater than 0, which is going to have two roots. One that's equal to 0, which is going to have just one singular root. And one that's negative or less than 0, this will have no roots at all. Okay, so please remember these three cases, okay, because we're going to be applying these a lot into our questions. Okay, let's move on to our questions. Question 1, find the discriminant of x squared minus 2x plus 2 equal to 0. Alright, it's just our regular quadratic equation. So what I'm going to do is first say what a, b and c are. A is going to be the coefficient of x squared, which is just 1. B will be the coefficient of x, which is negative 2. And c will be the constant number at the end, which is just 2. Okay? Just determine what your a, b, c are, and all you need to do now is sub it in to our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac. So b is negative 2, so we're going to have negative 2 squared. Negative 4, a times c is simply 1 times 2, so I'll just write 2, okay, and then simplify it. So negative 2 squared is positive 4, 4 times 2 is 8, so 4 minus 8 is simply negative 4, and that's our discriminant, okay. All you're doing is substituting the values into your discriminant formula and finding the discriminant, okay. So all you need to remember is the discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac. And I know, although it doesn't ask you to find how many roots there are, if it's a negative discriminant, I've explained just prior to this question how many roots is it going to have if it's a negative gradient. This is negative discriminant, sorry. If this is less than 0, okay, then it will have no roots at all. Okay, hope you already remembered that. That's question 1, okay? Although it doesn't ask, you should also know that this has no roots. Okay, because it's a negative discriminant. Okay, that's question 1. let's move on. So question 2 says, find the discriminant of negative 3x squared plus 1 equals to 0. Okay, now I'm just going to rewrite this as negative 3x squared plus 0x plus 1 equals to 0. Okay, I just added that extra 0x because we don't have any x's here. So I just wanted to add that in so we have this x squared, x and the constant. Okay, and just for those who are a bit confused. So now that we've got that, we can determine what a, b and c are. Okay, a is simply going to be negative 3, b will just be 0, and c is simply the constant 1. Okay, so now that we've decided that, let's put it into our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac. So b is 0, so it's going to be 0 squared minus 4 times a is negative 3, c is simply 1. Okay, I subbed in all the values, now all I need to do is simplify. So this comes down to 12. Okay, because 0 minus 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, times 1 is negative 12, and then 0 minus minus 12 is positive 12. So that's our final discriminant. Okay, and again, although it doesn't ask you to specify how many roots there are, how many roots is a quadratic function like this going to have if the discriminant is 12? Well, 12 is a positive number, so therefore if it's positive, if discriminant is positive, it will have 2 distinct roots, right? As I've said previously. So I hope you remember that, although it actually doesn't specify, okay? So that was discriminant. Please remember b squared minus 4ac and the 3 different cases, if it's greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0, okay? That was question 2.